green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready?
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. And a good football Friday morning, Eagles fans. Appreciate you streaming in here to Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here to hang with you for the next couple hours before we start to break down Eagles Giants coming up on Christmas. A couple internal things. First, Johnny Mac, we got to do a hell of a show today for Tyler Bolich. You guys noted this before the show started. Shame on me. I did not notice this. I guess Tyler is our first streamer on a daily basis.
Yeah, always. And the beauty is Tyler's nice, very rarely. Just, good morning. It goes a long way.
So it's not just not a holiday season thing. Tyler's trying to
always there. Number one.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I certainly recognize the name, but I didn't realize he was like the number one guy for almost every single show. Good on you for noting that. And thank you, Tyler. We appreciate it. We'll try and do a heck of a show for you for the next couple hours. And one of our other regular streamers, I think he's a John McMullen fan, ECW and WWF wrestling dude. I'm assuming, right? Do you think that has any reference?
WrestleMania is coming, by the way. The Eagles had the Golden Championship belt that they give to celebrities. So they got at least one title. They were carrying that around.
That's good that they got the belt. He asked, is this the last Birds 365 before Giants and Eagles? And the answer to that question would be yes. Birds 365 is officially off on Monday for the holiday, aka Christmas. So yes, we will be making predictions. I will get a McMullen prediction before we get out of Dodge here today on the Eagles versus the Giants, and then
the Eagles play on Christmas, so I won't be off. We're going to have a pregame show, a halftime show, a postgame show. We're going to be at the game, and we're going to do a show on Tuesday to the reactions. So. Right. You're going to get plenty of Eagles, but technically we won't have a Birds 365 on Monday.
That was what ECW asked about, the last Birds 365. So, yes, there'll be plenty of pregame stuff right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, and then, of course, the postgame stuff after a Christmas Day game in which, John, I remember both of the two previous Christmases that the Eagles played. One was, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I forget, 2006. When Jeff Garcia filling in for Donovan McNabb went down to Dallas, beat the Cowboys, and very famously looked in the camera coming off the field saying, "Merry Christmas, Philadelphia," which endeared him to Eagle fans for years to come thereafter. And then also the year that they won the Super Bowl, they played on Christmas, 2017. Nick Foles filling in for the injured Carson Wentz against the Raiders. That was one of the ugliest football games I've ever watched. The Eagles won. Nick Foles stunk. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He was terrible that day. The defense was good. It was freezing cold on Christmas Day. Just an awful day. I watch it on TV. I was not going down to Lincoln Financial Field on Christmas Day to see that game. And I made that decision before they played it, as ugly as it was. But they are undefeated on Christmas, Johnny Mac, 2-0 all time. They put their undefeated record on Christmas Day on the line against the Giants.
Yeah, how about that? I don't know what that's going to matter to this group, but I think it's a good matchup for the Eagles. So I think it's a chance to get at least a little bit healthy. I don't know what it's going to mean if they play well. If they don't play well, I know what it's going to mean. It's not going to be good. But yeah, I think they got a good opportunity to at least gain some confidence over the final 3 weeks of the season going into the playoffs. And maybe that helps. I mean, confidence is a big thing in this sport. So you got to take advantage of the pins that are there when the pins probably aren't as good as the other pins. So you got to knock them down. You feel better about yourself, and who knows, you may make a run in the postseason.
You mentioned get right, get healthy. Well, they had full practice yesterday. I don't know if it was full, but it was more than a walkthrough. So they did get all the guys out there with a injury report, not an injury estimation, and mixed reviews yesterday. The fact that they get Juergens back, I think, is a big plus. Not that Suopeta did a bad job when he was in there for Juergens, but continuity on that line, and even needed that much more because, not surprising, Dickerson was not at practice. He's not going to play this week, healing from the surgery that he had on his finger. So the offensive line for me is a key here this week, and they lose one but add one, which is okay. The bigger concern for me is linebacker. Nicholas Morrow didn't practice yesterday. Zach Cunningham has been out for a while now, and he did not practice either. So I would guess his status for Monday is questionable at best. Who's going to be playing linebacker for the Eagles on Monday against the Giants, Johnny Mac? Said coming through that locker room door.
Now, at this stage, obviously today is going to be important. Today's the bigger practice. So I'll get to see who they're at. Going to play at left guard, most likely. Whether they're going to move Sue to left guard or go with Tyler Steen. Certainly seems like, as you mentioned, Cam's going to play. It was a full go, so I would imagine he's going to be back. Linebacker, you got to hope Nick Morrow's out there. Otherwise you're going to see a lot of three safety looks. A lot of three safety looks. That might even be the base defense. And Shaq Leonard would have to be your only essentially all-ball linebacker till you get to Ben Van Sumeren. So not a lot of options if both Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham can't play. So it's going to be very important. And remember, late in the season, you're more apt to manage injuries to try to get veteran players to the game healthy. So it's not by any stretch saying he's going to be out because he missed practice on Thursday. And I'm already mixing up my days because the game's on Monday. So today's Friday. Today's the more important practice. But they need him out there. And for all the people that decry Nicholas Morrow, and I get it. There's limitations there, but he's been pretty solid, except for one game, and they need him. They do need him, and we'll see if he's ready to play. And you're right, it might just be management. If he's got something that's ailing him, don't push him because they know they need him for Monday afternoon against the Giants. You'll get a better read on that. And the key is, and Morrow's been okay. He, like everyone else the other night against Seattle, wasn't good. John, I know it's as basic as it gets, but tackling is kind of important. And the Eagles were terrible at tackling in Seattle. And, oh, by the way, Giants come to town. And even though I've been impressed with Tommy DeVito, let's be serious, Saquon Barkley is their number one weapon. Whether it's them handing it to him and or them throwing it to him out of the backfield, he's the guy that you've got to be able to stop if you're going to stop the New York Giants. And I think they're going to get a steady diet of Saquon Barkley on the ground. And, oh, by the way, Saquon is the kind of guy who can run through tackles. Can't have that happen. John, they got to be able to bring them to the ground. They can't tackle like they no, and that's why this is a game where you need your linebacker. This is a game where, in theory, you would want to play less three safety looks, and have more linebackers on the field, more traditional linebackers. Maybe that's not the way the NFL is going as a whole, but in this particular week, yeah, it would be it would be the worst week possible to lose not have both Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham in the lineup. Because yeah, I mean, Saquon's by far their best offensive option. And, if you want to go down that route and try to envision how the Eagles lose this game, it's probably got a lot to do with Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, it's funny. I looked it up because, and rightfully so, the Eagles, Sidney Brown specifically, had a bad tackling day in Seattle. No question about it. I went to PFF and I looked at the tackling grades for the season. They got the Eagles as the 4th best tackling team in the NFL.
Really?
Yeah, which tells you tackling is, it ain't good in the entire league because the Eagles aren't great at it by any stretch. Now, they were worse than normal. For instance, Matt Bowen, the ex-safety, did it's a great list. He does, I think it's 101 traits, like at all positions, and who's the best at, who's got the strongest arm, quarterback, who's, A.J. Brown was the best contested catch receiver. He named him. Best open field tackler in the entire NFL, Reed Blankenship. I mean,
is he getting that for the one stop that he had on the half-yard line? Are we putting a major emphasis on that? Because that was the best Eagle tackle of the year. I don't know about the whole league, but the best Eagle tackle of the year was Reed Blankenship at the half-yard line.
He's done a good job. If you notice him in the open field, man, he's a really sure tackler compared to the rest of the league. Now, if you want to go back to 20 years, there were probably a bunch of guys better, but it's kind of a lost art and everybody deals with it. Kind of my point. And, 4 out of 32 is pretty good. Only better tackling teams. New England is number 1 and they're 3-11. Dallas is number 2. Washington, and they're 4-10, is number 3. Then it comes to the Eagles. Bottom 5, Buffalo, Carolina, Seattle, Houston, Denver, with our old buddy Alex Singleton, who misses a lot of tackles, makes a lot of tackles, but misses a lot of tackles.
No, I give PFF the credit that it deserves. I usually agree with it. I don't always agree with it. There are times where I do not see what they're seeing. I know they put the time and effort in on the film work, but sometimes it just doesn't equate to me. And I watch a lot of football. I'm in front of the TV every single Sunday, all the way through the last snap on Sunday night. Yeah, I don't necessarily see the tackling in the league the way that our buddy from PFF does. But hey, if the Eagles are the 4th best tackling team, how about you play like the 4th best tackling team? Because they sure as hell weren't the 4th best tackling team in the NFL last week. They were brutal against the Seattle Seahawks, and they better bring it with Saquon Barkley because he's not afraid to run through tackles. That's been a key for him. And tackling is, of course, key in this game, specifically one guy, and that would be the quarterback of the New York Giants, Tommy DeVito, because the New York Giants offensive line is, let's see, you got the PFF handy. I would suggest they are the worst offensive line in the National Football League. Not one of the worst offensive line in the National Football League, seeing as they've given up 72 sacks. That's with 3 weeks to play. That's not the end of season number. If you give up 72 sacks for a season, you've had a hideously bad year. Oh, they've got 3 more weeks of giving up sacks at 72 already. Their offensive line is terrible. They've had some injuries there, but they're just brutal. From Daniel Jones to Tyrod Taylor to Tommy DeVito, Giants quarterbacks have just been sitting ducks all year long because of the Swiss cheese offensive line that the Giants have. Is this the week that the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line finally eats, John?
I don't. I mean, it's been one of those years where, um, for whatever reason, they're not getting home. I think they'll have an opportunity. I mean, I think they should. Um, it's hard to count on it. Um, they just haven't. Um, and they haven't been consistent. And um, but this is a quarterback that will give them an opportunity. This is an offensive line that will give them an opportunity. We talked about last year in the 70 sacks and Carson Wentz, and certain types of quarterbacks hold on to the football, give you an opportunity to get sacks. This is an opportunity. So, and that's when I'm talking about confidence, all right. In the big scheme of things, if there's not a lot you can gain from this game really, because you're supposed to win. You're supposed to win easily. What are they favored by? 2 touchdowns.
I think it's up to 13.5.
Yeah.
It's just short of 2 touchdowns.
So the only thing, if you play poorly, there's not a lot of gain. You're expected to win. You're supposed to win, all that kind of stuff. So it can only really go in a negative fashion. If you struggle to win, the worst case scenario is you lose, obviously. So theoretically, there's not a lot to gain other than that confidence, and that's big. I mean, confidence is huge when it comes to professional sports, and the Eagles don't have it right now, and they don't have their mojo, whatever word you want to use. So to get it back would be a big thing, and but it's hard to say they're going to get 7 sacks, 8 sacks, no matter who they're playing, because they haven't been able to do that this year.
True, but they also haven't played as porous a defensive line as the Giants. If that's their explanation, if they come out of this game with a 1 sack performance, I'm not accepting. Well, they haven't been a sack team all year. No, you were supposed to be a sack team when the season started. You've got 2 very highly paid defensive ends who are expected to get sacks, to get to the quarterback, to disrupt plays. And both Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, at least as per my expectations, and I would hope the Eagle expectations, have been underachievers this year. That's not cover enough for me. Well, they haven't done it to this point, so why would you expect it now?
Well,
I expect it now because I've expected it all year.
Hassan's in double digits. I mean, I think, to me, the biggest concern is dominance. Like, me, I don't care about that number as much as you. I need dominance. I haven't seen dominance. Dominance can come in many forms. We've talked about, and they haven't been as dominant. And part of that, by the way, is because they have to make up for the weakness on the back end. If the back end was better, you might be okay with the front, but they're not. So they have to play essentially above the dominance level that they played last season. They have to play above that to make up for the deficiencies in the back end. Do I see that coming? No. I mean, Dama's going to be on. He popped in the green room. One of his most interesting stats I was shocked at. They have 297 total pressures this year, including 57 quarterback hits. Through 14 games last year, they had 271 total pressures and 42 quarterback hits. I mean, the difference is the back end, not the front, the back end. The front needs to be more dominant because because people are getting filtered by the back end, failing again and again and again and again. I mean, that's the difference, and they need to be more dominant than they were last year. And and that's difficult. That's difficult, to say the least.
And yeah, I would say the fact that if you don't get sacks, it shows that pressures cannot be equated to sacks. Sacks are finishing, pressures are maybes. Maybe it works. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's an interception, or maybe it's a touchdown. I don't even know. It looked to me like there was no pressure on the touchdown pass by Drew Lock, but I don't always necessarily understand or agree with what they deem what is or isn't the pressure. They might have called that a pressure too, and that ended up being a game-winning touchdown pass. So I've never seen a team get a game-winning touchdown pass on a sack. So that's why I will always put an emphasis on sacks over pressures. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Mac Birds 365. Two good guests for you today. First one coming up next in his Hawaiian-clad shirt would be Paul Domowitch from our very own JAKIBSports.com and also the 3013.com. And a little bit later, Ralph Vacchiano, who covers the entire NFC East for FoxSports.com. So he's a Eagle reporter, a Commander reporter, a Cowboy reporter, and a Giant reporter. And Ralph is originally a New York guy. I had Ralph on my New York shows for years. He covered the Giants for many a season. So we get some insight from Ralph Vacchiano in hour number 2. But here in hour number 1, first up, our usual Friday morning insight from Paul Domowitch. It's next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac here on Birds 365, and we've got our Friday bud, Paul Domowitch, ready to jump in with us and talk about this matchup between the Eagles and the Giants, and can the Eagles stop the bleeding of this 3-game losing streak? Damo, did you gain anything from Matt Patricia's first turn in front of the microphones in a while as the new, John, what are we calling Matt Patricia? He's not the
play caller. Yeah,
the
defensive
defensive play caller.
He had the pencil, by the way. I was right.
You were right on that one. Were there any words of wisdom coming from Coach Patricia for you, Mr. Domowitch?
Mele Kaliki Maka, guys.
There's words of wisdom for you. I like it.
Yeah.
Not really. No. He was wordy, which surprised me.
Very wordy.
I thought he would be Beckian, but he was not. But no.
He was very professorial. I was shocked. He was Jim Schwartz without the baseball analogies. I thought he was trying to filibuster to try to get through it, with 2 questions. But no, he stood there and he took it all. He was really good. He was really impressive. I was expecting more, Belichickian. That's good. That's what I was expecting. He was, but I don't know what he could do at this stage. What you can't change anything. You can't add personnel. They'll bring in Jack Leonard.
He mixed up a little bit of the coverage. What disappointed me, I mean, I didn't expect him to become a turn into Wink Martindale blitzwise, but 2 blitzes the entire game. That last drive, he rushes 4 the entire drive. I mean, you have to go after Drew Lock at least once on one of those 3rd and 10s, and he doesn't. And they didn't put pressure on him.
With these coordinators, all of them, all across the league, they'll dominate a whole game, and then they'll be in a position to put it away.
Yeah.
And then they play soft, and you see these things happens all over the league, not just the Eagles. You see it, and they go down and score and win the game. It's bizarre to me. Even Flores, who's the most aggressive guy in the NFL, he'll play that way for 3.5 quarters, and then he'll go, all right, I'm going to play coverage.
But John, this, and I'm pretty sure Damo will concur. Prevent defense has been in the National Football League for 50 years. That's not a 2023 occurrence. This has been going on in the league for 50 years. Teams getting everything in front until it goes over your head and you end up losing the game. So that's not Eagles. That's not 2023. That's been in the NFL forever.
It happens all over the league. My part is they're more concerned. Tell me if you think this is true, Damo. They're more concerned about answering questions in the press conference than winning a football game. Because Jody's right. If you get beat over the top for an 80-yard touchdown, you look like the biggest moron in the world, and you got to go answer questions versus a slow death where you can at least say, well, look at Bradbury. They seem to be more concerned, literally, about answering questions. And yesterday's a perfect example of that. The Eagles hid Matt Patricia for the whole season. They didn't have to. He proved himself. He's a former head coach. He's answered questions before. He handled himself well. Boy, they're really concerned about, not losing in a certain way. Not just the Eagles, the entire NFL. Agree or disagree?
Oh, totally agree. And I think it's been an organizational flaw or characteristic going back several years. And I think it all emanates from Howie. And then he it relays it to his PR staff, who relays it to the coaches that, they just overemphasize their dealings with the media more so than their decisions sometimes, and it just baffles me.
They give us a lot of power. We don't have that much power, Tom. But they give us astonishing level. Brandon Graham basically blamed us for getting Sean Desai fired. I'm like, we have tremendous power we yield. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, and the odd part there is blaming the media for Sean Desai. The media was spending the entire season asking for Brian Johnson's head. So, they gave the media a head. It just was a different one.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know who in the media actually said maybe the Eagles need to swap out their defensive coordinator.
I don't know anybody.
I'd really like to know who that person was.
Yeah.
Is it a collective media or is it an individual media? I can tell you a group that started to think along that line called Eagle Nation, as judged by calls to WIP and varying other outlets. So I think Brandon's ire was kind of misguided. If you're going to say someone other than Nick Sirianni decided it was time to change the defensive coordinator, I'd say it was Eagle fans more than Eagle media, but that's just me. Maybe I'm a little defensive. Is that unfair of me, Dama?
It is not, Jody. I think that the players and coaches, not just here but everywhere, lump talk radio and the callers and the hosts into the media.
Yes. The media.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a meeting every Tuesday at the Chickies and Pizza Hut. We get together to create our narrative, our cabal. Damo, don't be late next Tuesday.
I'll try to be there on time this week.
You do that. All right. Now this is not a media thing. This is not a Philly Eagles Nation thing. This is a Jody McDonald thing. Does Quez Watkins have compromising pictures of Nick Sirianni? I do need to know the answer to that question. If I'm going to piss anybody off because I said this and I'm not flying the Eagle banner, and I point out the fact that I think the Eagles' third wide receiver position has become a joke. I'll apologize if anybody's offended, but I'll stand by it because I feel that way. What is it about Quez and Sirianni?
It's this organization's infatuation with speed. He can't do anything, but he can run fast. It's why they drafted Davion Taylor in 2020, I think. Turned out to be a complete waste of a third-round pick on a linebacker that didn't even know how to play football, but could run a 4.4 40. Same thing with Quez. They think just having him run down the field is going to create some problems for a defense. When you can blow him over with a feather, when he can't block, he can't run a bubble screen. What use is he? I've said this for years. Greg Ward is wasting away on their practice squad right now. They put him in the game. He's much more functional and useful to Jalen Hurts than Quez Watkins ever will be in his lifetime.
Yeah, and they don't even have to go to him. Oz has been making plays all year. They don't throw him the ball, but when he does, he catches it, and he catches it in the end zone. He's got as many touchdowns as Dallas Goedert, who is one of the big three. The offense runs through A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But somehow, Oz, who can't get off the bench, has 2 touchdown passes, and Dallas Goedert only has 2. Somebody explain that to me, why that doesn't merit Olamide Zaccheaus being on the field more than he is.
Well, I think the bigger issue is, Quez was out for whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks. And they couldn't get the ball to the third receiver with Julio Jones or Oz, whomever. My bigger issue, they don't have a third receiver of any competency.
Sure, yeah.
And that to me is the bigger issue. And maybe Greg Ward could help. It's amazing to me with so many great athletes, and we talked about it before the Eagles finally fixed the problem, when it was a bigger problem because it was 1 and 2, and they had to pay AJ. They had to draft Devontae at number 10. They had to pay AJ $100 million to fix that position. Carson broke the franchise record with no help from receivers for passing yards. It was astonishing that in this era, they couldn't get a receiver. Part of it was Alshon's injuries and his decline, but they couldn't get a receiver with 600 yards, Damo, until they finally said, all right, we got to keep doubling down till we fix this issue. But I think I bring that up because I think it speaks to their development. You see other teams, guys go down, big time receivers, they'll pluck somebody off the practice squad that can give them something.
Yeah.
Because one of the strengths, I always talk about the weaknesses of college football. One of the strengths now is receivers. There's like a boatload of them coming in every year because that's all they do in college. And the Eagles can't find a developmental prospect at the stinking receiver position. I think that's the bigger problem.
You're right. And this is a team that has gone totally committed to the 11 personnel personnel groupings, 3 wide receivers almost 90% of the time now, and you don't have depth at that position. Makes no sense. I mean, if something happens to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith in these next 3 weeks, they're screwed.
That would be ugly. That would be ugly.
Exactly.
Man. How about Britton Covey? He's having a great year as a punt returner. How about him as a slot receiver? He caught a lot of passes at Utah. I don't know if he can play receiver, but I guarantee he play receiver better than the guys they got out there. I don't know if he'll survive because of how small he is. But yeah, I mean, Joseph Nada on the practice squad, he didn't impress me in training camp, didn't get a lot of separation, but could he be much worse? Or Devin Allen, talk about speed. Maybe he can clear out something.
Yeah, I mean, their answer to depth was signing Julio Jones, which 5 years ago would have been a fine thing to do.
That would have been great. Yeah, 5 years ago.
Now it's I mean, Julio doesn't. I mean, it's on E. I mean, the needle is on E there.
Real quick, sorry, Jody. To button up the thing about the receivers. Also, if you're going to be an RPO team, you got to be able to run a damn bubble screen. You got to be able to run, and I hate them, but you got to be able to run them, and you got to be able to run a rub routes. We're 3 years in, and this is Nick Sirianni's expertise.
Right.
I have a problem with that as well, Domo.
Yeah.
Even AJ and Devontae, you got to block. You got to be able to run a rub route. You got to be able. It seems they block when they're running rub routes, and they don't block when they're running bubble screens. It's amazing to me.
I mean, last week they ran 5 screens, gained 2 yards, total of 2 yards on those 5 screens, and 2 of them almost turned into near disasters.
Yeah.
When Jalen basically threw it before he realized, that the probably the best receiver there was a defender. So, and the rub routes, I mean, they've been the most effective thing to do against man-to-man defenses now. Bunch formations and using rub routes, and they're not very effective with it. And teams are beating them with it. I mean, you can go back to the playoffs last year in the Kansas City game.
Yeah.
But that's there.
John almost on a weekly basis points out how the bubble screen is the ugliest play in football. And I try and tell him, John, it's because you watch the Eagles too much. It's not that the bubble screen is an ugly play. It's when the Eagles run a bubble screen, it's an ugly play. No. Other teams in the National Football League are making it work. And doing it just fine.
I know people are saying it's still ugly. It's an ugly play, but it can be a successful play. Yeah. I'm not. It has to be.
I think 49er fans are okay with bubble screens to Deebo Samuel.
I'm just saying,
turns a 2-yard pass into a 45-yard gain. I'm guessing they think that's pretty.
Yeah, well, of course, fans are just worried about when. I get it. I'm saying from a purely aesthetic standpoint, it's an ugly play. Just
last year, their screen game was pretty good, including some of the bubbles.
Dallas Goedert.
This year, I think part of the problem is the blocking has just been horrendous on a lot of those bubble screens. I mean, I don't know why you have. I mean, Devontae Smith's not going to block anybody. I mean,
he's a good blocker for a 166-pound guy.
That doesn't cut it. I know the point you're trying to make, John, but it doesn't cut it. I was going to say that's the one thing, because there were people out there going, "What the hell are the Eagles doing taking a 165-pound guy in the first round?" Maybe because he's a great wide receiver, and that's what he's playing. That's the position he's playing. Just look at the results. Stop looking at him. Look at the results. He actually does pay a price with his size in the blocking game. He's just not good at it. He just is incapable. I don't think it's lack of desire or anything else.
No, he
just
tries.
Incapable.
He tries.
And he's taking a pounding too. He's taking a pounding catching the ball.
Did not practice yesterday. I did. You should have mentioned that. He's got a knee injury, so we got to keep an eye on that as the week goes on. Issues at wide receiver, which is interesting because you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and we're not talking about them. But there's certain things. If you're going to run that offense, and by the way, it kills me, Damo, that everybody this week seems to have figured out this is a simple offense. You watched the show for 3 stinking years. I've been telling you how simple it is. And everybody thought, oh, it's very simple. Yes. And that's my point. It comes down to execution. And right now they're not executing things like rub routes, things like bubble screens. These can be successful plays if you execute correctly. What do you think has happened during this 3-game losing streak offensively? We know the issues defensively. There's personnel issues. Yeah. Offensively, this should be a pretty damn good team.
Yeah. I mean, I think, A, they need to rely more on the run game. B, they've become too infatuated with the deep ball, which was pretty evident on Monday night with those 2 horrendous passes of Jalen's, and then a coach who says, "Well, we were looking, possibly might have gotten."
Boy, that was the dumbest answer in the history of the world.
Yikes!
You need 15 yards to put the best field goal, one of the best field goal kickers in football, in position to tie the game and send it into overtime, and you throw a ball up for grabs, hoping for a pass interference, according to him. Boy. I mean, that you're right. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard come out of a coach's mouth in a long time.
I tried to defend Nick over that, and I don't know why, because he should correct it. But I think what it was so disjointed. I think what he meant to say was, we're trying to give AJ a shot outside, and you might get a PI. I think that's what but for some weird reason, he started with the PI.
That's
just, it's just,
yeah.
But for that, I would say, and Nick did mention, I asked him about that, what you just said, that sort of balancing line between taking shots and taking what's there. And Seattle was playing their 2 safeties in the parking lot for most of the game.
Yeah.
They were clearly trying to take away the big plays. And so I didn't ask it about Jalen, because he's going to button up if you ask him about that. But he started to talk a little bit, and he said, well, there are things essentially built into every play. If it's not there, you got to go to underneath, and you got to go to, in that case, the Kenny Gainwell. Everybody talks about Kenny, but they don't dump the ball off. At this stage, they're not dumping the ball off. But he could have went to the second progression, whether that was the flat or over the middle, although it looked like, I think it was Devontae.
Devontae was wide open underneath, right on the same exact pattern.
Was it Devontae was open?
Yes.
So he did say there's options. So I blame, that was a bad decision by the quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, you go up to the snap, Damo. The corner had a 12-yard cushion.
Yeah.
He didn't look off the safety, and he's still throwing it. That to me is a bad decision by the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen clearly is not playing as well this season in a lot of aspects. And one, first and foremost with me, is the tunnel vision he tends to show with regard to that deep ball. I mean, like you said, people were open. Devontae was open on the first interception on a shallow cross.
Yeah. He was wide open. Yeah.
He's got people open, and he admitted yesterday he didn't see them.
He didn't see Gainwell. Well, Gainwell was on the other side of the field.
Right. I don't blame him for the Gainwell thing.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I've been saying that for 3 years too. They don't dump the ball up with Jalen Hurts. He's going to run if it gets to that point. So I kind of do put the Gainwell part of it aside, because they're never going to get to that. But I mean, just the 12-yard cushion should alert you that, all right, maybe this isn't going to be there. Because they're clearly trying to limit the explosive play down the field because of what we just talked about, the whole league-wide mentality. Don't get beat over the top. And by the way, Seattle won the game on the same concept, giving Njigba a chance on the outside. They won the game doing the same thing. They just executed better.
Yeah.
All right. Then along those lines, Damo, James Bradbury play 100% of the snaps this weekend?
Not if I'm the coach, but I mean, I'd go with Ringo and Ricks. They're going to make mistakes. Now, I mean, I would give them these 3 games to make their mistakes and get them ready for the playoffs, because right now I have zero trust in Bradbury's ability to get it done out there. And I don't know what's going on with Darius Slay and his decision to get surgery when he did. So yeah, I'd go with Ringo and Ricks.
That's bold. And Bradbury is playing poorly. I guess I would play it safe there and stick with Bradbury, at least, especially with what's upcoming. I think you want to gain confidence as you get to the playoffs, and they have an opportunity because of the schedule.
You don't think Wan'Dale Robinson can light him up this week, John?
Well, anybody can light him up, but I think it's a chance to rebuild some of the confidence that maybe has been lost. But before you came on, you might have heard us talking about your most interesting stat to me this week, JAKIBsports.com. Make sure you go read Damo's stat pack, because I knew they were close, but I didn't think they're significantly ahead in total pressures when rushing the quarterback than last year's 70 sack team, 297 to 271. It's interesting to me from this perspective. The back seven is so poor compared to last year's back seven.
Yeah.
That I think, and I was saying to Jody, I think the defensive front has to dominate more than they dominated last year. And they've dominated about the same over a large sample size, but it's not showing up because of the deficiencies on the back end. You buying or selling what I'm saying there?
No, I buy. I think to a large degree, that's their problem. That's why they're not getting there. I think there's a few other contributing factors. I mean, lack of depth at edge rusher right now. Sweat's playing way too many snaps, even though he's still playing pretty good. Carter and Jordan Davis have kind of disappeared a lot of the times. I don't know if they're just getting tired inside. I mean,
they're not used to playing this much.
Yeah. I mean, they're relying way too much on Fletcher Cox. I mean, Cox was like, should we sign him or not sign him? They bring him back, and now he's like,
good signing, man. That's one of Howie's best decisions, man.
Yeah,
he's having a good year.
If they didn't have him, they'd really be in trouble. So, yeah. I mean, all you got to do is look at the time quarterbacks, the speed that they're getting the ball out. I mean, clearly they're able to find receivers pretty quickly before these guys get there. And that's the blame. You're blaming that on the linebackers and the DBs.
Agreed on the DBs, the linebackers. Who's going to play linebacker for the Eagles this week? Nicholas Morrow missed practice yesterday. They haven't gotten Zach Cunningham back yet. Now, those might be your 2 starting linebackers by Monday, because we still got a couple days to go. But assuming neither one of those guys are good to go, you going to line up and play some linebacker for the Eagles on Monday?
Well, it looked like they put Sidney Brown at linebacker last week.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much so.
And we saw what happened. He missed,
75 tackles.
Yeah, I mean, that's another organizational mistake in devaluing that position to the degree that they have. And then, drafting Nakobe Dean and he can't stay healthy. So,
injuries. By the way, Avonte Maddox could be back this week. So we talked about the back. That would be huge, because that would have Avonte's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. People criticize, and he's got durability issues, no question about it. But he's also, I don't think people realize, he's great in run support, comparatively speaking, to most nickel corners. He's their best blitzer from the edge. It brings the blitz back in the equation. They have nobody to do it. This could really help them if he's able to get out there. Now, he hasn't played since week 2, so you would think there would be a ramp-up period. But boy, I mean, that could have a domino effect that could really improve this defense down the stretch.
Yeah, and it gives you a little bit of flexibility with regard to, I mean, Roby hasn't played terribly. It gives you a little flexibility as far as using him and Maddox together in some packages. And
he can play outside. Roby played outside a
Yeah.
lot before he
Yeah.
became a slot corner. So that could help you there as well, or at least give you a little bit more depth. Yeah, it could be. You typically don't think of slot corners having that kind of impact on the defense, but for this defense, for this team and that player and all he can do, that might be Sean Desai might be sitting there thinking, man, if I could have lasted one more week, got Avonte back.
Yeah. And you mentioned his ability to play the run. I mean, their run defense is horrible right now, and having Avonte would help.
Damo, the Eagles have owned the Giants of late. When I say of late, it actually goes back like a decade. They've won 16 of the last 19, 16 and 3 over the last 19 games against the Giants. That's saying plenty. And of course, 3 for 3 last year, with them all being of relative ease. Well, they'd have to work in that last regular season game when they got Jalen back from the injury. That was the one I thought they're going to beat the Giants by 4 touchdowns. They beat them in their house by 4 touchdowns, beat them in the playoffs by 4 touchdowns, but they didn't do it the last game of the season. They won, and that's the most important thing. Does that matter at all coming into this game? Is there a mental advantage to the Eagles because they beat them 3 times last year and beat them like a drum for a while? Teams change. It's stable second year. It's different players on both teams. Does the fact that the Eagles have owned the Giants mean anything in Monday's matchup?
Matters none whatsoever. I mean, this is a team that's reeling right now. I don't even know if they know who they're playing this week. They just they need to win badly. And 5 weeks ago, if you would have looked at these last 3 games and said there's a chance they're going to lose 1 or maybe even 2 of them, people would have laughed at you. Now, I mean, they're capable of losing to anybody on any given day.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they're coming off. It's amazing to me how quickly it's unraveled. And part of that, I think, is self-inflicted. Not, on the field, the issues are real. Off the field, the issues are, I believe, self-created, self-inflicted. They panicked. They didn't believe in their 10-1 record. It's clear in hindsight. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe that is the case. But boy, I mean, you've heard the narrative, and by the way, that comes from, obviously people do the research, but Cam Cameron and Baltimore, when John Harbaugh fired him late in the season for Jim Caldwell, they struggled, but they, got their bearings and went on to win the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, you can come up with one occasion in the Super Bowl era. Great. You can't come up with one. The Ravens fired Cam Cameron. They didn't Freaky Friday it and swap positions. They didn't. All right, you go be the analyst and you're going to be the defensive play call. This is dysfunction live in living color. Damo, who do you blame for this?
Well, I mean, this move, it's like Howie back in 2014 when they they put him in charge of desks and chairs rather than fire him, and then he ends up coming back as the GM.
I hope Sean got a raise like Howie did, at least to get demoted. I hope they kicked him a couple extra bucks.
Maybe they threw in a trip to Hawaii after the season. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, this came from upstairs.
Yeah, it's self-inflicted.
Along those lines, who do you think is going to be the Eagles' defensive coordinator? Not this week. We know it's still Sean Desai, in name only.
Yeah.
In name and in responsibility, who's going to be the Eagles' defensive coordinator in 2024?
Probably somebody that's not around here right now. I would assume they'll go out and get somebody. I mean, I cannot believe that that Nick Sirianni is going to turn over the defense to Matt Patricia next year. So I would say someone else out there.
If they make a run, you never know, Damo.
Yeah.
Maybe the pencil is here long term. I think it's whomever Howie wants. I think we are at that stage. We already lived it with Doug Peterson. I think we're at that stage where it's like, all right, Nick, It's your offense. By no means am I saying Nick's going to get fired or walk away, but he's going to say, it's your offense. Do what you want for now. Now, if that keeps going in a negative direction, we're going to get the Press Taylors and Mike Rose of the world. But defensively, it's going to be like, we're going to pick the guy, and you don't worry about it. That's how I think it's going to go. Any disagreement with that?
No, unfortunately.
That's not a good.
I mean, that was the beginning of the end of the Doug Peterson era.
Yes, it was.
When the GM and owners started saying, "We'll do this. We'll handle that."
Damo, how much faith do you have that Jalen Hurts turns it around, has an above average? I won't talk about MVP level game, but surely not as bad as he was the other night against Seattle. Mix in whatever you think he can and or the Eagles need him to do with his legs. If you got an A+ to an F grade and you were looking into the crystal ball, what kind of grade do you think you're going to give Jalen Hurts after the game against a Giant defense that's average at best? They're relatively healthy. They got a couple injury issues, but it's not like they're devastated. The Giants defense is what it is, which is nothing special. What kind of performance you're looking for Jalen on Monday?
I'm going to be an optimist here. I mean, I think he's going to have a good game. I think he's going to turn it around. He realizes, Jalen's good at realizing what he's not done right. He's got some shortcomings, but I think he's going to have a solid game this week. I'd give him a B+ coming out of the Giants game.
If he plays a B+ game, is an Eagle victory a lock?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
would agree.
Assuming they don't turn the ball over elsewhere 4 times or on, the Giants convert 15 of 16 third downs. So
that's not impossible with the way this team plays defense on third down. Don't throw that out as a possibility.
Wow, that's an interesting. That's a battle to watch. The 31st ranked third down offense against the 32nd ranked third down defense. That is, you talk about a battle of heavyweights. Somebody's got to win that. Somebody's going to win that battle. The Giants are 31st in total offense, 32nd in passing offense, 31st in points per game, 31st in third down offense, 30th in red zone offense. If this defense can at least have a reputable performance against this offense, it don't look good moving forward, because this is as easy as you're going to get in the NFL, unless you're going to college and you're going to play an FBS team or FCS. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is the week to gain some semblance of confidence back, and that might help you going forward.
Yeah. All right, Damo, I've got pen and I've got paper, and I'm going to write down Johnny Mac's pick when he gives it to me later. I'm going to make my pick, but we need to start with the Paul Domowitch prediction for Eagles and Eagles and Giants on Christmas Day. What do you got for a final score?
27-17 Eagles.
Yeah, I like it. 17. That defense, Matt Patricia defense. And mark my words, people will get excited by that. They'll say, oh, they gave up 17 points. Never look at the context. Never look at the opponent. Never. It's always.
Yeah, the defense looked good until the final 2 minutes of the game the other day.
Yes.
When they went 98 yards, stuck in the end zone, won the game. All of a sudden, the defense was still a calamity.
Yes.
It can swap on a dime. Damo, great stuff as always. Like John said, check out JAKIBSports.com. Damo puts up a great stat package and posting every single Friday leading into the Eagles game, and he jumps on here with us on Birds 365.
At P Damo on Twitter, and he's going to be at the Media Cabal Luncheon, where we all get together and we puppeteer everything.
A lot of fries down there, chickies and pizza. And by the way, Damo, I want an ugly Christmas sweater. I was kind of hoping this week. You stayed the course. You are Mr. Hawaiian. I give you credit for that. But if you ever going to vary, I thought maybe we'd get an ugly Christmas sweater this week.
I don't have an ugly Christmas sweater. Do you have it? Yeah,
no.
I don't have one.
Neither one of your wives has ever bought you an ugly Christmas sweater?
Not yet.
That's just
my daughters have some ugly Christmas sweaters, but I don't.
You can't borrow one of those. You're a little bigger than your daughters, huh? Okay. All right, Dom, always a pleasure. Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Bailey guys.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Playing on us again.
Yes.
Paul Domowitch here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. A couple things I want to touch on with John around the league stuff. One thing the Eagles will not have to worry about. You need a Jody McDonald prediction. I'm not going to give you a prediction on the game yet. I will predict that the Eagles will not lose one of their coordinators during this offseason. Some people thought that was again
so early, man. You make a run to the Super Bowl, you know.
Brian Johnson will not be a head coach in the National Football League this year.
I'm going to say,
what kind of odds do you need me to give you? 5?
I'm going to say, I'm going to say
1. I'll let you set the number if it's
well,
fair,
I don't think the Eagles are turning it around. I've said if they make it to the Super Bowl, I think it changes the equation. Even if they lose, I think it changes the equation back. I will say he's got a better chance than Sean Desai.
As I said, neither of the Eagles coordinators will be getting a head coaching job this offseason.
All depends on how they finish. If they make the Super Bowl, I think Brian's getting the job. If they don't, no, he's not getting the job.
The other thing that I could say, if I hit these 6 numbers in Powerball this week, you won't see me after Christmas. You'll never see me again here on Birds 365. That's an if too.
Come on, you got to say goodbye.
No, I don't. I go to Damo's house, overpay for every one of the Hawaiian shirts he has.
Hawaiian shirts and get out of Dodge.
Get on the first plane to Maui.
Get out of Dodge.
You'll never see me again.
Well, you're just saying by that. That's fine. That's a prediction. They're not going to go far, which is fine. I agree with that prediction. I think they'll probably win a playoff game at this stage because the bottom of the NFC looks like a disaster.
That is not what I'm saying, because I still do think the Eagles can get it together and maybe even go to the Super Bowl. I'm saying I don't think Brian Johnson gets a head coaching position, even if that's the case.
All right.
All those years,
older.
Those years, the Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator had a chance to get a job, and he never did. He had to go somewhere else to take a lateral position with the Commanders. I know that Andy Reid is much more a hands-on coach, but if you listen to Nick Sirianni this week, it's his offense. Don't talk about anybody else. Don't blame anybody else.
Be very careful with that, because
Nick Sirianni's
there are many Andy Reid offensive coordinators. The reason Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job in the NFL has to do with other issues, not his performance. I will just say that. And I will say, maybe not in Philadelphia, but Brian Johnson is very well regarded in the NFL. And there are no off the field concerns about Brian Johnson. Andy Reid's history with offensive coordinators is clear. They get jobs. Eric Bieniemy had some issues way back in the day at Colorado, and everybody's afraid that they're going to come back to the surface. And that's why he's not a head coach in the National Football League.
Here's one thing, and the Eagles could get a turnaround. They could start by getting right this week against the Giants. Here's one thing I'll tell you that's even longer shot of Eagles getting to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts being good enough in the last 3 games of the regular season and whatever playoff games they do win, or maybe they win them all and win a Super Bowl. If they win the Super Bowl, yeah, maybe Brian Johnson gets a head coaching position, because Jalen Hurts is going to have to carry them that far. His regression this year is going to be on Brian Johnson's offseason plate. I don't think there's any way to potentially take it off. So do you know how great Jalen Hurts is going to have to be over the last 3 games of the regular season?
Well, by the way, that also brings up this last 3 games. I was talking about mainly defensively, but also offensively. It's a chance to get their confidence back, and it's a chance for Jalen Hurts to right the ship personally and get back going in a positive direction. So this 3-game stretch is very important. Obviously, it's very important for a lot of reasons, namely to potentially win the NFC East, potentially get the number 2 seed. But even more so than that, if they have legitimate thought probably, and obviously that was the goal coming into the season, Super Bowl or bust. We all know that. If they have legitimate hopes of getting there, they have to, it's intangible, but they have to regain their confidence and swagger and mojo, whatever you want to say. And that includes Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's got to play better. He's got to play better.
And I surely believe he will play better to get on a par with what he did last year. Yeah, next to no chance, next to no shot. That's why I don't think Brian Johnson's going to get a
that changes so quickly, though. That's what I'm saying. When he was 10-1, when the Eagles were 10-1, we were just talking about it yesterday. He was the leader in the clubhouse and the MVP betting odds. I mean, it changes so quickly in this league. He can, if he can right the ship against bad teams. There's such a lack of context. Nobody's going to look at, once it's done, nobody's going to look at, oh, Jalen Hurts played well in the final month of the season. They're not going to look at it. That's why it's so important for the defense, for the off. It's so important to get that confidence and start playing well again. Mark my words, the whole narrative going into playoffs, oh, the Eagles are playing well again. Yeah, and it's not going to mean anything until they're tested against the real teams. But it means a lot to play well in these final 3 games.
Yeah, here's the difference. And I use it, but I try and keep it in the proper context, the MVP betting markets. That's a different thing than, let's use All-Pro, not Pro Bowl. Right now, Jalen Hurts would be about the 5th quarterback in the NFC for All-Pro performance this year. Goff would be ahead of him. Stafford would be ahead of him.
Stafford's
Certainly
great,
Purdy would be ahead of him. Dak would be ahead of him. He's 5th. If you're looking at the all-pro quarterbacks in the NFL, he's no better than 5th. So he might have been first in the MVP, because here's how they decide the MVP. Are you the quarterback on the best team? And if the answer is yes, guess what? You're the MVP leader in the clubhouse.
I'm not saying
the quarterback of the best team.
I'm not saying it matters. I'm saying that's how quickly things turn. The same thing in a negative fashion. Look, Jalen played poorly in Seattle. Maybe the illness had something to do with it. Maybe it didn't. But it's among the 9 million cliches around the NFL. One of them is, once you watch the film and settle down and get the emotion out of it, it's usually not as bad as you think when things are going bad, not as good as you think when things are going good. So it works both ways. And that's the case. Jalen Hurts has not had a poor season by any stretch of the imagination. And if you go back to that snapshot in time, which I'm with you, it doesn't mean anything. But if you go back to that snapshot in time, I would have told you, well, he's gotten better as a passer, but he's regressed as a runner, which I don't think was necessarily a bad thing from a health standpoint.
This year,
Yes.
think he's gotten better as a passer at some juncture during the year?
Through the first 11 games, yeah.
Than last year?
Yeah. He was progressing. Now he hasn't played well in this losing streak, and that's how quickly things change. And if you go, again, it's whether you like PFF or not, I have nothing to do with them. They watch every game, they watch every play, they grade every play. He's still ranked 10th in the NFL right now, even after these 3 horrible games. He's not having a bad season. He's having a bad stretch. And I think that quickly, like Matthew Stafford, I'm watching last night. What a game. What a game. But I've been a Matthew Stafford guy forever.
Mm-hmm.
And getting back to our conversation earlier, Matthew Stafford's a game manager. He's a game manager.
Yeah, we have a different definition of game
very, very upper echelon of that 85%. I was talking that Chris Long. Very upper echelon of that 85%. But he's living proof as a Super Bowl winner. And as people would shit on him in Detroit because he had a bad supporting cast, and I would tell everybody for years, not just you, Jody, on every show, I would say people in this league are awed by Matthew Stafford. He's in a bad situation, bad team, and he couldn't win. He couldn't overcome it because he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. You need, even somebody at his level needs the supporting cast. He gets the supporting cast. He wins the Super Bowl. Now it's wavered a little bit, but they're still better than they should be because Matthew's really good. He's a perfect example. But getting back to my original point, Jalen Hurts is not having a bad season. He's having a bad stretch. He was having a good season. And even though, in that snapshot, even though he probably wouldn't have deserved to win MVP if the Eagles finished 16-1 and they finished it, even though he probably wouldn't have been the best quarterback technically, he would have won the award because, as you pointed out, best quarterback on best team. He still would have had a good season. He was having a good season at 10-1, really good season. He's having a bad stretch.
I disagree. He was worse than he was last year. I don't know how you can achieve a level at 10-1. I'm not talking about now when he's added the bad games. At 10-1, he was not as good as he was the previous season. And when you've regressed from where you were the season before, I just can't use the words very good to describe your season. I can't. If you can, that's your choice. I could not do that. I could not say, oh, Jalen's having a very good year.
Well, we did the show at 10-1. I don't recall you saying he was having a bad season at 10-1.
John, there's a difference between bad and very good that you can drive a truck through. You just said you thought he was having a very good season at 10-1. I'm telling you, I disagree with that. I can't say very good when you've gone backwards from where you were the previous season. And I thought Jalen had gone backwards from where he was the previous season, even at 10-1 this year. So I know. Well,
I guess I don't remember all the angst with Jalen Hurts when they were 10-1. I guess I don't remember it. With the fan base, with you, with everybody, I don't remember it. I think there's some recency bias involved here. I think he was having a very good season. I don't think you could be 10-1 and have a bad season. You
don't remember conversations about us talk right here on Birds 365 about the Eagles are 10-1. ... But
oh no, we had tons of those conversations.
Well, then how
and we had tons.
You just said you don't remember them.
We had tons because they were about the team. They weren't about. Now we had discussions about Jalen Hurts, about the running aspect and what was going on with the running aspect.
Well,
but I don't remember.
Part of the game, is it not?
I don't remember this tremendous angst as a passer that Jalen Hurts was regressing. I certainly didn't hear it very much. I didn't believe it. Now over the past 3 games, he hasn't played well, but overall his film grades have been pretty rock solid, except for the San Francisco game and except for the Seattle game. It was even rock solid in Dallas. I just pulled it up. It was rock solid. In fact, his worst game besides those two was Tampa Bay earlier in the season when they just dominated running the football. I was impressed with his continued development as a passer. Maybe I'm crazy. I think it's recency bias. I think because he's had a bad stretch. Yeah. Now running, yes. Running, no question. There were some issues when it came to the knee, that stretch. But even before that, started in New England. He didn't look like he had the same giddy up, whatever you want to call it. And we talked about that a lot. Was he trying to protect himself, or were the Eagles drilling into his head? Protect yourself. You know, we need you for 17 games, blah, blah, blah. We need you for 20 games, really, was their mentality. So, yeah, the running aspect. But I didn't think that was necessarily a bad thing for his health and long term.
I'll tell you where the biggest drop-off was for me, John. Turnovers. He's at 15 turnovers before the last 3 games. Now he's added 2 more interceptions since, but Jaden just didn't turn the ball over last year. He didn't.
Yeah, well,
he turned it over. Not just recency bias, not just the last 3 games. He's been doing it all year. He's been turning the football over.
Well, and the Jets game was the perfect example, and I killed him for that. That was a terrible, horrible decision. That throw in that situation against that team, and I said it at the time. And you know, I'm not saying he was perfect. That was a terrible decision. And the turnovers, yeah, I mean, as a whole, you know, he's at 7 straight games where he had a fumble. Now, some of the fumbles, again, you got to look at it. Some of the interceptions are terrible, like the Jets interception. That's terrible. The AJ Brown interception, terrible. Quez Watkins interception, terrible. There are other tip balls, things like that. You know, that's so you got to look at each, you know, when somebody fumbles at the mesh point, that's always given to the quarterback. Sometimes it's the running back, sometimes it's the quarterback. So you got to look at them.
The Eagles had this year. How many of Jalen?
They've had a few. They've had a few. One was DeAndre. One was everybody. One with Kenny Gainwell, because everybody hates Kenny Gainwell. They shit on. That was completely Jalen's fault. There was one earlier in the season that was DeAndre's fault. So it's, you know, you got to look at each particular.
Right. So maybe he's had one at most 2 less fumbles than he actually.
Well, now he's turning it over.
A lot of turnovers.
It's turning it over too much, but long term, and people said the same thing about Dak Prescott. And I remember having this discussion with Brad Spielberger and you. For his entire career, Dak Prescott was very ball security conscious, and he had a bad year.
Yep. And
I said, you know what? He's going to probably go back to the guy he usually is and protect the football. And he has, for the most part. Same thing I feel about Jalen. He's so ball security conscious. Eventually that worm is going to turn. But yeah, I mean, they've turned it over too much. There's no doubt about that. They're -6. And they were, Damo just happened to put that in the stat column. People should look at that as well at JAKIBsports.com. They were +8 last year as a whole. When they won the Super Bowl, they were, I believe, +11, I believe was the final number in the regular season. And really, if you think back to the beginning of last season, at one point they were like +14.
Right.
So if you go, and they ended only a +8. So if you go to that demarcation line, they've been -12 since that point. That is unacceptable.
And they need to be careful against the Giants this week, because Giants are not a very good team. They played better of late. I actually like some of the things that Tommy DeVito does, and they've got a running back who could cause the Eagles problems. Giants do get takeaways. They are a bit of an aggressive defense. They got 22 takeaways this week, so that could be a key aspect of the game. All right, we went well over. McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. Hoping to hear from Ralph Vacchiano, covers the NFC East for FoxSports.com. Ralph's scheduled to join us coming up in just a couple minutes, so stay here on Birds 365.
Any professional sports coach will tell you There's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you being here with us on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming in with Mac and Mac. And streaming in with us is Ralph Vacchiano of FoxSports.com. I've only known Ralph for decades. I used to have him on all the time when he was covering the Giants day in, day out for the newspaper up in New York. Ralph, we certainly want your Giant opinion, but we're going to get your Eagle opinion too, because you cover the entire division.
Sure.
We're trying to figure this out. What the hell happened? How the hell can they get it righted? Is this season now just adrift at this time from someone who's following the Eagles but doing so from outside the market? What's the Eagles' problem?
Well, there's a bunch, and the weird thing about it is it's not really a new problem. I know they've lost 3 straight, and that's the focus. But all of these things that have gone wrong during those 3 games were things we saw early in the season that they got away with. I think 3 of their biggest problems for me are obviously Jalen Hurts is turning the ball over like crazy, which is still all these years later. It's the Tom Coughlin lesson beaten into my head that, turnovers determine every single game, and he's turning it over. They're going to lose. So that's one problem, which he was doing earlier in the season as well. The second problem, I think, on offense, they don't commit to the run as much as they should. Sometimes it's they don't commit to it early, or sometimes, like in the game in Seattle, they commit to it early, then forget about it in big spots and decide to take these crazy deep shots when they should just be running the ball down an opponent's throat. And the third one, which really dates back to last year, is this is not a good tackling defense. There were games last year where they were really gashed on the run because the linebackers and secondary couldn't stop guys. Once they get through the defensive line, you can pile up a lot of yardage. And now we're starting to see that again the last few weeks. Teams like the Buffalo Bills ran like crazy on them because they had a hard time tackling. And, even in the secondary on short passes, they have a hard time tackling sometimes, or even, getting in position to tackle. So those are the 3 big problems. And, but again, I've kind of seen that all year long. It's just really starting to hurt them now.
Ralph, I would say they have a bigger problem, and they have significant on-field problems. You just mentioned some of them, but before I get to them, and there's plenty of them, I want to get to the off-the-field problems, because I want to pick your brain how the rest of the league and the rest of the division is looking at what went on in Philadelphia. Freaky Friday, I'd like to say. Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. It's unheard of. People go back to Baltimore when John Harbaugh fired Cam Cameron for Jim Caldwell. He fired him. He's out of the building. That you could argue that Sean's here. Have you ever seen anything like it? And what is the reaction in the rest of the division in the league? Because they did Sean decide dirty comments from a couple people.
Yeah, I guess I've never seen it exactly like this. I've seen it sort of like it in terms of, head coaches taking over usually it could be either the offensive or defensive play calling, but they don't necessarily demote, which I guess they didn't do here technically. They don't demote the coordinator, but having another assistant sort of take over the coordinator's job while the coordinator is still there is unprecedented for me, certainly of any of the teams I've covered. Every time it's happened, even with the head coach, that coordinator is out at the end of the year. So there's no doubt Sean Desai's gone. It's, I guess, a tribute to him that he's willing to stay in this situation. And, I'm sure there's contractual and money reasons why he did too, but it's clear that where this is going, he's not going to be the defensive coordinator next season. And, the reaction that I've gotten around the league is a couple of things. One is this is usually a panic move when it happens.
Yes.
It's does not send a really good message, but, sometimes you feel it's necessary. You have to do it, but it's really odd for a 10-3 team to do it. That's why it makes it even seem like it's more of a panic, because a lot of the teams around the league would love to have the Eagles' problems, and things were going generally good. Usually you can fix that with the coaches you have when you're still on top of the league.
Kind of like if you're sleeping with a beautiful woman and no one really knows what's going down there in the room afterward, and somebody comes in and tells you, well, you just can't go upstairs anymore. You can sleep on the couch. We've got on demand. Feel free to order up whatever great shows you want overnight, but you don't get to sleep with the beautiful woman anymore. Just weird what the Eagles did to Sean Desai last week. Ralph, need your Giant expertise.
Sure.
The whole Tommy Cutlets thing has been overdone and overblown. All right, his mother makes his bed, still cooks for him. His agent looks like he should be on The Sopranos. All that is fun stuff, but it really doesn't mean a hell of a lot. I actually think he's played okay. He's made some plays and some throws that have impressed me. And for a guy who was third string, not activated on game days, to be able to come in and throw the football like I've seen him throw it, I've actually been impressed by him. It seems to me like he's at least taking control of this locker room with the Giants winning 3 of their last 4 games. Is this Tommy DeVito's team?
Well, for the moment, it is. It's a cute story, and good for him. He's making the most of his 15 minutes of fame. He's certainly proven to me that he has a future in the league. You're right. I mean, some of the throws that he made, a couple of touchdown throws he made were incredible. He can make plays by running the ball as well. Clearly, he's got the respect of his teammates and all of that. But when you step back and look at the big picture, it's not like he's throwing for 350 yards a game. It's not like the Giants are putting up 30 points a game. They are still, under his direction, a terrible offense and terrible passing game. What he's shown me is he's got the skills, and he's got. I'd be comfortable with him if I'm the Giants next year as my primary backup. Is he a starter? I'm still in the Daniel Jones camp. Where
are you really?
I am, because everybody harps on the first 5 or 6 games of this season when the offensive line was horrific, when Saquon Barkley wasn't there, and they were absolutely struggling. But everybody forgets last year when Daniel Jones carried a bad team to the playoffs. He dragged them and to a playoff win on the road. So injuries aside, and I'm concerned about his neck and concerned about his knee, but I think Daniel Jones is a much better quarterback than Tommy DeVito. If the Giants think otherwise, they better get somebody in the draft, because Tommy DeVito does not look to me like a guy who is that elite quarterback that you need to win in this league. He looks like a guy who would be.
You think Daniel Jones is an elite quarterback?
I think he has the potential to be. I don't think he's there yet, but I do think last year he was, he put up numbers last year that were good with no receivers, getting killed behind an offensive line. He had an ability to lead that team, which really impressed me. I think he's got some skills that, in the right situation, they can win with him. I don't think he's top 10, top 15, but I think he's better than Tommy DeVito for sure.
Yeah. I think, yeah. But I think the worst thing, and I said it last year, Ralph, at the time, the worst thing for the Giants was winning that road playoff game.
Yes.
Because at the time, Minnesota had Ed Donatel as their one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and it seriously, I'm not, that's not hyperbole. It was, and they've turned it around with Brian Flores this year. It was really bad. And I think, look, it's exciting to win a road playoff game, but in many ways, I think long-term that hurt the Giants because they thought they're a little bit better than they really were. And they should have gotten the course correction when they got to Philadelphia in the playoffs, but I don't think they did. But yeah, when we're talking Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, I mean, my question is Daniel Jones good enough? Do you have to go a third avenue? It's not Tommy DeVito. He's clearly better than Tommy, but is he good enough to get you where you want to go? Because I think his ceiling is maybe winning that one playoff game against a team that has issues like Minnesota last season.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that, for the Giants, they believe that he can be elite. They believe he can be their Eli Manning. There was a time where nobody thought Eli Manning could do what he did in the Super Bowl.
That's true.
I think that if you put the right team around Daniel Jones, you get him some weapons, you have a good defense to support him, you can win with him. You can maybe make who knows in the playoffs, you can maybe make a little bit of a run. But is he the guy? Is he a Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts or Dak Prescott who you can get on his back and have him carry you to a Super Bowl? Maybe. I don't think so. I think he'd have to really step up his game to do that. He certainly hasn't done it so far. And I also agree with you, by the way, that, last year was definitely fool's gold for the Giants. I was saying that all off season long when people were trumpeting this team is, watch out, they're a contender now. They were always going to take a step back. They believed a little internally that they're a little better than they were. I think that winning that playoff game kind of forced their hand a little bit with Daniel Jones and giving him the contract. I think they believe in him, but I think that they didn't have choice once they got to the playoffs. They had to bring him back. So it did, it made this year look even worse because a lot of people inside and outside had higher expectations that were completely unrealistic.
They used a relatively high draft pick on Jalen Hurts from Tennessee. And we have the Quez Watkins effect here in Philadelphia, which I chide the coach on all the time. Oh, he can fly. He makes other guys open because he stretches the defense. Except for the fact when they throw the ball to him, he doesn't catch it and or the other team intercepts it. Is he really stretching the defense? Hyatt is a guy who absolutely can get down the field, and he's averaging 18 yards a catch. So he's doing what he was advertised to be able to do, but he hasn't done all that much of it, and he hasn't gotten one in the end zone yet. Cut him some slack because he's on a rookie. He's on a rookie curve. Where are the Giants at with Jalen Hurts? Can he become one of their top two wide receivers and be a league average one or two wide receiver in this league?
He's another guy that they weren't using much early when Daniel Jones was the starter, and they've gotten to him a little bit more late in the season as he's developed. Can he be I think he can be a number 2 type receiver, a stretch the field type of guy. I don't know yet that he has the skills to be, up there with any of the number 1 receivers in the league. I think he is I think he's got the potential to do a lot, but one of the knocks on him coming out of college was, he didn't run all the routes and, he's more of just a speed guy. He's got to get used to a lot more than just being the deep threat to be that number 1 receiver. The problem with him as a deep threat with the Giants is no matter how fast he is and how strong-armed the quarterback is, if you're going to go to him down the field, he actually needs time to get down the field. And Giants quarterbacks do not get a lot of time behind that offensive line to throw the ball. And that was Daniel Jones' problem early, why they barely used Jalen Hurts, is Jones was dropping back, and as soon as he set his feet, the pass rush was on top of him. Or he had to run outside the pocket, which makes it harder to go downfield. So if they ever get protection, they could use Hyatt for a good deep threat, but to be a number 1 receiver, you got to do more than that.
Yeah, It's amazing how long the Giants have been trying to fix that offensive line. That obviously they've tried. They've taken and they just can't get it right. Andrew Thomas is a very good player, but
that's it.
Yeah, it's amazing how they haven't been able to at least improve to an average sort of degree in this particular league. But you mentioned something that was interesting to me, because Jody and I, before you popped on, Ralph, were discussing Jalen Hurts, and you mentioned you still had him in that category of guys who can, and he already did, lift a team to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You haven't been wavered over this stretch, because a lot of people here are wavered on if Jalen Hurts is really that type of quarterback now.
I waver only in the sense that I don't think he's having that special year because of the turnovers. When you look at his numbers are on pace or beyond what he did last year for the most part. And yet we're still looking at it as, these things don't look very good, which they don't come on the Eagles standard. It's the turnovers that really alarm me. I don't waver because I wonder if there's a few factors in that. I wonder how much his knee is more of a problem than we thought it was all season long. If you're hurt and focused on that a little bit, maybe your decision making is a little off. Maybe your grip on the ball is a little less. I don't know. I think that early on in the season, he looked out of sync to me. He looked indecisive at times, and I wonder how much of that was the change in play callers. I don't know how much different the scheme of the new offensive coordinator was, and how much he had to get used to that, but he didn't look like it was very comfortable at first. And the other reason I don't waver is you've seen quarterbacks have really bad turnover numbers and then bounce back the next year. And Dak Prescott's a great example of that. So I can see Jalen Hurts next year coming back and looking like the old Jalen Hurts.
And that's what the Eagle fans are hoping for this week. Ralph, I've been saying all week I'm scared from an Eagle perspective from this game, because they're not good against the run. Last year, they were the best team in the league against the run. This year, they're well in the second half. Linebacker play, safety play, even the DTs haven't been as good as they were last year when it comes to stopping the run. How many carries Saquon Barkley get? If I set the over-under at 24 carries for Saquon Barkley in this game on Monday afternoon, you going under or over?
I'd probably go over. It's a big workload for Saquon Barkley, but that's the way I'd look at the Eagles and how to beat them is run the ball like crazy. The only way Saquon Barkley doesn't get that many carries, I think, is if they decide to let Tommy DeVito run a little bit as well, and he takes 9 or 10 of them away. But that's the vulnerability in the Eagles right now. If you can establish that run, you can handle that defensive line, which just is not as good as it was last season, and you don't allow the pass rush, which has been inconsistent, to pin back its ears and go after you, you've got a shot. Now, I don't know that the Giants necessarily have a shot, because if you want to run, you got to block, and they're still the offensive line still isn't good, so they'll have issues. But that's the formula. I mean, Tommy DeVito is not going to beat this team by throwing for 300 yards. If they beat the Eagles, it'll be because Saquon Barkley has 150.
Yeah. How is Saquon's mindset these days, Ralph? I mean, to be in that type of situation, you just mentioned, he's got to be the workhorse. Running backs don't get paid in this league. He went through, they made the 1-year deal. He's got to think about his long-term future. And you're showing up to a game that doesn't mean all that much, and you got to carry the football 30 times, and the wear and tear, and that affects things down the road. Any signs of that creeping in to his mindset?
I don't think so. I think he's handled everything like a real pro. He's clearly not happy about his financial situation. And, I get it. If I'm a running back, I wouldn't be happy. If I were a general manager and owner, I understand why you're not paying running backs anymore. But, I think his unhappiness has come through a lot, but not on the field, not in the meeting rooms, where he still is doing his job. There's no indication that he wants to sit out and rest. He wants to prove, I'm worth this. I think it has helped that the Giants have been really honest with him, from my understanding, about how far they're willing to go. It's not like they told him, we want you, and then didn't make an offer to keep him. They just didn't make an offer that was good enough. And they've been telling him the reasons and telling him where they can go and how they want to try again this offseason. So I think he feels like, okay, they're being honest with me. I'm going to prove to them I'm worth what I want, and then we'll see where it goes. He came to the conclusion when he didn't hold out in training camp that sitting out was not going to increase his value, which he's probably right, because running back values aren't going up anyway. And if you're going to be a problem about it, your value is even less. So he's done everything that they could ask. And, I would imagine even in a lost season, that'll continue down the stretch.
Can they put the franchise tag on him again this offseason?
They can. It's a little bit more expensive. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. I think it's like 12 point something million dollars. They might. They have, I think Xavier McKinney is the other guy who could possibly get the franchise tag, though I would doubt it. So they could do it again. I think they do want to sign him, I'll say long-term, but, it would be one of those deals that's looks long-term, but is really 2 years when they can get out of it. And I think that's, they love him. They think, and correctly, he's the best player on their offense. He just gets hurt, and running backs have a shelf life, and you can't ignore that reality in the NFL.
All right, Barkley is their best player. Are they getting their second best player back from injury this week in Darren Waller?
Yeah, he played last week, and I think
he did. Okay,
he did. Yeah, and he had a couple of moments where he looked like the Darren Waller they expected. Get a short pass over the middle, take off for a medium-sized gain. So, that certainly will help Tommy DeVito have that kind of weapon. It's really, when you look at that offense, he's by far their best weapon. I'm still not a fan of any of their receivers. And Darius Slayton is a good number 3 receiver to me. Jalen Hyatt's a deep threat if you have time. Everybody else are just sort of filler guys to me. They signed Paris Campbell, who can't even get on the field anymore. So you get Darren Waller, you've got a legitimate weapon over the middle, where, by the way, the Eagles have their most trouble. If I'm the Giants, not only am I running the ball, I'm attacking those linebackers. I'm going right at them every chance I get. And if you put Darren Waller on a crossing route, make them try to tackle him, which is not always a guarantee.
Yeah. I would just say one thing. Saquon's their best offensive player. Maybe Darren Waller's number 2, but their best player is Dexter Lawrence. How is Dexter? I saw he had a hamstring issue. Is he good to go?
I believe he didn't practice yesterday. I don't know what his status is today. I think they're concerned about him. It's hamstrings linger. He's a big man, which makes him linger even more. Mm-hmm. I would assume if there's any way to have him go, he's still probably going to be limited, and they have a very, very thin defensive tackle rotation. That's the flip side of this, where if I'm the Eagles, man, if you're ever going to establish the run, this is the game to do it, because they just, especially if Dexter Lawrence can't go, the Giants have nothing up the middle of that defense until you get to Bobby Okereke, their linebacker. But down that line, you can create a lot of holes there, and they should run for 200 yards if they really commit to it.
Ralph, as you can well understand here on Birds 365, we're all narrow focused in on Giants and Eagles, but Cowboys have a pretty damn important game this week. And we got some Cowboy fans here on the stream who like to go back and forth with all our Eagle guys with comments. They got over a hurdle 2 weeks ago when they beat the snot out of the Eagles in Dallas. They hadn't beaten a good team all year. Their schedule was what it was, and they had just beaten up on the sisters of the poor, beating them up pretty damn badly, which would include the Giants and the Jets. Giants twice, Jets once. They own New York, but they hadn't beaten a good team, and then they beat the Eagles. Then last week, they had a chance to beat a good team on the road, which they haven't done yet, and the Bills smacked them in the face. They got another chance against the Dolphins in Miami this week. How badly did the whole matching up with the Eagles and one loss and tiebreaker, all that aside, just mindset, Dallas Cowboys, if they want to do what everybody wants to do, which is make a Super Bowl run, at some point you're going to have to win a big game against a good team on the road. This is their last chance to do so this year against Miami. How do you like the Cowboys this week against the Dolphins?
I don't love them because they struggle against good teams on the road. That's right now the next hurdle. There's always a series of hurdles with the Cowboys, right? You start to believe in them, and then okay, well, Dak can't win the big game. Okay, he can win the big game, but he can't win the big game on the road. They can't stop the run, or they can stop the run, but their pass rush is inconsistent. Whatever. There's always something with them, and this is the latest hurdle, but it's a significant one because the odds, I think, given the Eagles' schedule, are pretty good that the Eagles are going to win the NFC East, and that means the Cowboys in the playoffs are going on the road. They're going to have to probably get through Philadelphia and San Francisco in order to get to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, if they can't, if what have they lost to? They lost to Arizona. They've lost in Philadelphia. They lost, obviously, in Buffalo, and they lose in Miami. And San Francisco is the other one. I'm sorry.
Pummeled.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have all that on your resume, at some point, you really, I think, on a team has to wonder, what do we have to do to win these games? And now you're all on the road the rest of the way. So, to me, this is big. It's a tough get-right game for them because, obviously, the Dolphins are really good. But I think if they win, even if they win by a point and some freak occurrence at the end of the game, at least then they can feel better and say, okay, we did it. Now we know how to do it, and you go in the playoffs and take your chances. But if they don't, boy, that's going to be hanging over them. It's going to make it even tougher for them in the playoffs.
At Ralph Vacchiano, make sure you follow Ralph on X, formerly known as Twitter. The NFC East reporter for Fox Sports does a tremendous job. We got to talk about one more team. Nobody cares about the Washington Commanders, but I do. I think they're the most interesting of the bunch, Ralph, for this reason. New owner, we know him well here. Josh Harris, owner of the Sixers as well. Has he gotten answers? Typically, when you get a new owner, he wants his own people in there. So I would think Ron Rivera is probably not going to be back. And if he's not back, does anything they've gotten answers on Sam Howell, does that even matter? Because you're going to bring in a new coach with a new thought process, a new philosophy. Has Josh gotten any answers, really? Or has he just got to wait until he remakes the organization?
I think it probably hasn't gotten any answers, right? I mean, I think he knows the big answer, I guess, is he knows that Ron Rivera is going to be fired, and so is Martin Mayhew, the general manager. I think that they know that, he gave them a year so he can evaluate and see what they could do, and it didn't work out. He got a year's look at Sam Howell, but, you're exactly right. You bring in the next coach and general manager, they might be sitting on possibly as high as the number 2 pick, probably in the top 5, with a lot of quarterbacks sitting there at the top of the draft, and they'll have a shot at them. As I think Sam Howell can be really good. I think he showed a lot of promise, at least through the first 12 or 13 weeks. He slumped the last few, but none of that matters at all if the new GM comes in and says, I have the number 2 pick, and boy, do I love Caleb Williams, or boy, do I love Drake May, or I'm at, 5 and I've got a chance at Jaden Daniels and I love him. That's all that matters. And I get the feeling that Josh Harris is committed to whoever the new regime is, letting them make the decisions. It's not like he's going to say, no, I love Sam Howell, we got to keep him. He's going to leave that up to the next football guys. So there aren't going to be any answers until we know who those next football guys are. And, we're still probably a month away from that.
Very true. All right, Ralph, we need you on the record. There are 3 potential outcomes here. Giants pull a pretty major upset, beating the Eagles on Sunday. Eagles do exactly what they're supposed to do and win easily, like they did basically all 3 times against the Giants last year, or somewhere in the middle. And that's a pretty good pretty good hole you can drive a truck through. 13 points. The Eagles are favored by the Eagles over. Are you going Giants upset, Eagles dominate the way they should, or it's a competitive game? Give me a score on Eagles-Giants Christmas.
I think the Eagles will dominate. I think they're smart enough to know that they have to keep this game on the ground. I would think something along the lines of 31-14 Eagles. Maybe it's a little nerve-wrackingly close in the third quarter, but this is still not a good Giants team. They're just, for all the excitement of Tommy DeVito, there's a lot of things they can't do, and this is such a big step up in class. So I will think the Eagles, in the end, will look like they've dominated. And I'll say this, if they barely win, or if they somehow actually lose this game, that is really panic time in Philadelphia.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. I would question whether they have the ability to even win a playoff game at that point.
If they lose the game on Monday when you're driving home, Rob, do you take Walt Whitman or Benjamin Franklin going back over to Jersey after.
It's usually the Walt Whitman, I think.
Walt Whitman, yeah. Feel free to stop and help any Eagle fan from jumping because there probably
might be a
will
line.
be some ready to go over the top. Ralph, great stuff. We always love when we have you on. Thank you very much for doing so. We'll certainly get you back on again sometime during the playoffs. Thanks for doing it today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Ralph Vacchiano. You can read him at foxsports.com. It's been covering the NFL for years, specifically the Giants for a lot of those years, but covering the entire division these days for Fox. All right, McDonald, McMullen, Mac and Mac coming back to put a bow on the show and give you our predictions on the Eagles and Giants on Christmas.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, you got Mac and Mac, McMullen and McDonald coming down the home stretch. Quick review for those of you who just streamed in. Had Paul Domowitch in hour number 1. He predicts the Eagles to win 27-17. 10-point victory. You can somewhat be affected by who scores when, but if you win by 10, and Damo said did Damo use the word comfortably? I think
somewhat, yeah.
Remember?
I think he used comfortably.
27-17. Ralph Vacchiano just came on and said maybe it's a pull away late game, but the Eagles win handily. If you're winning 31-7, you're covered a 13-point number. Yeah. You're winning handily. He's got 31-14. Johnny Mac, do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Up to you.
Okay, I'll go first.
You're the leader.
I'm going to go ahead and tick off all the Eagle fans who last year had a problem when I pointed out when the Eagles and the Giants played last year, last game of the regular seaon, Jalen Hurts forced to come back with a bum shoulder, would have never taken the field if the Eagles didn't need that game to lock up number one. He didn't need to play in that game. They didn't want him to play in the game. He had to play in the game just to give themselves the best chance to beat the Giants. And the Giants, who couldn't go anywhere, took their players off the field. They played with their backup. They pulled their best player. Saquon Barkley didn't get a handoff, and they scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to pull within 22-16.
Isn't that the great Davis Mills, I believe? Wasn't it Davis Mills last year? Or
no, Davis Mills is the backup for the Texans.
No, Davis Webb. I'm sorry.
Webb, right.
Yeah, I get my Davises mixed up.
Yes,
I apologize.
Webb off the bench.
Yes.
No, just the facts, ma'am, is Joe Webb, not Davis Webb. And people don't like me pointing out that had the Giants recovered that onside fumble, the Eagles could have gotten fucked, if you get my drift. All right? Well, they dominated him. Why do you have to say that, Jody? I'm just stating facts, okay? I'm not saying the Giants outplayed the Eagles. I'm not saying the Giants looked the equivalent of the Eagles. Shoot, 2 weeks later, the Giants came in off a playoff win, played all their best players, and Eagles beat the snot out of them. But those are just facts that Eagle fans don't like when I point out a fact that, oh, shoot, a game was actually competitive. The Giants with their B team, their JV, stayed in the game and hung with the Eagles last year in the last game of the regular season. I think they're going to do the same again this week, John. The talent level between these two teams isn't close. The Eagles are the much more talented team. The Eagles have had the way better season. But the Eagles are in a bit of a funk right now that they've got to get out of. And the Giants have won 3 of their last 4 games. They were 2-8 at one point, and they've now got 5 wins. I think this game will be certainly less than 13 points. I think it's going to be less than a touchdown. I think the Giants probably score some point in the fourth quarter, and we may even be looking at another onside kick thing. Hopefully, if it's enough time left in the game, the Eagles can do something they did very well early in the season, which is run the 4-minute offense. A couple of times they got the ball and just were able to keep it and run out the clock. They could have done that last week against Seattle, and they didn't do it. They need to do it. They may need to do it this week. I'm saying 27-22. Eagles beat the Giants this week, but it's a competitive game.
Boy, I wouldn't like that if I'm the Eagles. And if it is like that, I wouldn't be happy if I'm the Eagles. And maybe that's the summation of this season, because I think nobody was happy even when they were 10-1. With the lack of style points and all that stuff. I think they're going to win pretty easily this game. If they don't, I got a concern because, like I said, this is as easy as it gets in the NFL. You're always there. Everybody's got good players in the NFL, but this is as easy as it gets. They haven't lost to the Giants at Lincoln Financial Field, I think, since 2014. So even when they're semi-good, they've dominated this team. They're not semi-good right now. As I mentioned, the offense 31st, 32nd, 31st, 31st, 30. They're terrible. The one concern I have, Wink Martindale, the blitz, the Eagles don't do well with blitz beaters. They don't have built-in answers usually for the blitz, and nobody does it better than Wink. So I think there could be some ugly moments for the offense. But for 1 week at least, in the pencil I trust, Jody, Matt Patricia is going to get it done.
You talking about hanging a goose egg? Are they going to shut the Giants out, Johnny Mac?
It's going to be very similar to last week's game with New Orleans. I think it was 24-6 or something like that. I can't go that far with this defense because it's been so bad. But I'm gonna put it at 13. I'm gonna go 27-13 Eagles.
27-13. All right. That would be a cover because the spread as of right now. And it could go up because it went up from 12.5 to 13. Johnny Mac's got him covering by a lone point. I think the Giants will do a little bit more offensively against this Eagles defense, and it will be a close game. And yeah, that's not a fake take, Mr. Real Zeal. Those are facts. It's not a take. When you're stating facts, it's not a take. A take is an opinion. A take is extrapolating and looking into the future. When you're actually just stating facts of something that's already happened that is in the past, it's not a take. Learn to use your vocabulary a little bit better there, Real Deal. All right. We'll give you the Real Deal on Monday. Oh, excuse me, on Tuesday. Because, no Birds 365.
Game on Monday. Yeah.
Game on Monday. Johnny Mac will be part of the pregame show and the postgame show, and we'll cover the Eagles even on Christmas Day from stem to stern. But no Birds 365. You and I will be here on Tuesday. I want to wish all our streamers, thank you very much for a great season leading up to Christmas. We want everybody to have a happy holiday. Both Johnny Mac and I have the Eagles winning because that's enough, isn't it? We'd like style points. We'd like a blowout, but I don't see it. John sees a little bit more than me, but at least we both do have the Eagles winning. So enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your holiday. Hopefully for you guys, enjoy an Eagle victory. Johnny Mac, have a happy and a Merry Christmas. I will see you on Tuesday.
You too, Jody. And to all the listeners, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy it and enjoy your Christmas present, the New York Football Giants.
Beware Tommy DeVito. That's all I'm saying. The Mac and Mac guys will be back on Birds 365 after Christmas on Tuesday. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a happy holiday, everybody. Bill Colarulo Power Hour coming up next here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.